Now, let's look with Paul for a minute, a little deeper into this. What were the components of contentment? I'll just give you a few things to think about. First of all, confidence in God's providence. Confidence in God's providence. Verse 10, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly, that now at last you have revived your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned before, but you lacked opportunity. For 10 years, the Philippian church had been unable to send support to Paul. 10 years. They loved him. He loved them. For 10 years, they couldn't send him anything. It was 10 years since God brought Paul to Philippi to start a church. You remember that, don't you? Acts 16, he came to Philippi, preached the gospel, got thrown in jail. He was delivered out of jail in an earthquake. The jailer and his family were converted. The church was planted. But for 10 years since that time, they had not supported him. But in verse 10 he says, you lacked kairos, translated opportunity. You lacked the season. There was no way that it could be done. Perhaps partly Paul's inaccessibility to them. Perhaps their own poverty, which was great. Remember now, Philippi is in Macedonia, and if you remember 2 Corinthians, it was the churches of Macedonia who, when they did give, demonstrated their great love out of deep poverty. But I rejoiced in the Lord greatly, because finally, when you had opportunity, Epaphroditus arrives in Rome with the gifts from the Philippians. Now at last, you've revived your concern for me. He doesn't blame them. He says, you were concerned before. And they were. When the 10 years ago he had left, they had given him something to send him on his way. Then in the intervening time, they had not been able to do that. This demonstrates, I think, the apostle's patient confidence in God's sovereign provision. He was so sure that God, in due time, would order the circumstances so that his needs would be met. All through those 10 years, somebody else met his need. And when it came to this particular juncture in his life, when he was in jail in Rome, and there was not another to meet his need, the providence of God ordered the Philippians to find the resources exactly on schedule and to have them delivered to the beloved apostle. There's no panic in his life. There's no manipulation in his life, because he has confidence in the providential control of God, that God orders all the circumstances, all the contingencies, all the diverse factors of life to produce his perfect will. He's always done it. You go to the Old Testament, you see it in the story of Joseph, you see it in the story of Esther, you see it in the story of Ruth, many, many other places.